Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to add basic colours and textures to an object in Blender. I'm emphasising basic there. We have very advanced ways of adding textures in Blender. Some of you may have heard the term PBR and UV editing. We're not going to be going into that in this video because this is just an introduction to texturing, just how to get colour or an image onto an object. PBRs will cover in its own extra advanced video. So to get started, here we have the default cube, and to change the colour of this, it's really simple. We go over into our coloured icons here on the right hand side. We go down to our material properties, and you see that currently we have a load of settings and we have a base colour set to white. If I click on that, I can change it to red. But nothing happens. And the reason that happens is because we're in one of 4 views in Blender at the moment. And we can see those 4 views by typing Z on our keyboard. And a little menu pops up around your cursor. So wherever your cursor is, that menu will pop up. And currently we're in wireframe mode. It just changed then. You'll be in solid mode by default. To see the colour, we go to Material Preview, and there we go, there's our colour. And we can change that at any time by just clicking and dragging. We also have a light and dark tab on the right hand side here. If we scroll down, all these settings might intimidate you at first, but it's very much a trial and error job. See, we've got a metallic slider here. If we bump that up, our material becomes more metallic. If we take the roughness down, it becomes more reflective, and we can play about with these settings as much as we like. We've even got an emission setting. We click on that, I can bump this up, and our cube will actually emit light. We can't see that at the moment, we would have to render it to see it, but that means our cube will actually glow now. I say trial and error for all of this. If anything goes wrong, you don't like it, you want to start again, it's real easy. You just scroll up to the top of your palette here, and in the very top right hand corner you've got a plus and a minus. Just hit the minus, it deletes that texture, and then add new to start all over again. Now that's all well and good for adding colour, but what happens if you want to add an image? Well, there's a second space we can jump into for editing our textures in Blender. And that's by clicking and dragging our timeline up and changing the timeline by going into the top left hand corner here where we've got the little clock and going down to Shader Editor. When I open that up, we've got a brand new space to create our textures, and these are through using nodes, and nodes are these little blocks here. If you search for these online, you'll find really complicated tree diagrams of all different nodes being brought together to create textures. These diagrams can become huge and very, very complicated. However, we're going to keep things real simple today. I've already applied a red colour, so that's what we've got here. And in fact, all the settings you can see in this bar here mirror what we see on the right hand side. So there's nothing really new here. It's the same kind of stuff. I'm going to create a new material, and I'm actually going to put an image on this cube. So I'm going to click on the X here to get rid of that texture. I'm going to click on Add New, and I'm going to rename it in this bar here just by clicking on it. I'm going to rename it Sneaker Scope because I'm going to apply a copy of the Sneaker Scope video I did early on. Now, we can't add images here. This just changed the colour and the properties. What we need to do is go into our directory, and here's my Sneaker Scope image. I'm going to click and drag it into this space, and you can see now it's got its own block. But nothing's appearing on my cube. What I need to do is where it says colour on this cube, and I've got a little yellow dot, I need to link that up to the base colour and its yellow dot. And I just do that by clicking and dragging a line out like so. And you can see my Sneaker Scope has been applied. However, it's all distorted and it's not really, it's not really looking that great. So one of the easiest things we can do is let's close all that down and let's jump into the UV editing tab at the top of my screen. And you can see my screen is split into two. I've got my cube on the right and I've got the image texture on the left with a funky looking shape. And this shape is the net of my object. Remember when you're at school and you cut out a net of a shape and then you had all the tabs and you glued them together and you folded them to create the 3D object? That's exactly what we've got here. We've jumped back to solid mode, so I'm just going to type Z and go back to material preview so I can actually see what I'm doing. With my cursor hovered over my image and the net on the left hand side, if I type A, that selects that whole net. And I can use my transformation tools now, let's say S to scale, to increase and decrease the size of that texture. So let's maybe do about there. I can also press R to rotate and G to grab, and you can see that it moves the texture around. However, my net doesn't look quite right. It's stretched out. This is like a rectangular shape, whereas over here I've got a perfect cube. And sometimes Blender won't read the geometry right and it will distort your image. That's why it's looking stretched out. So I can do two things here. I can go to the top of my 3D workspace and go to UV. And when I click on that, I get a load of UV options. And I can just go to unwrap and not a lot changes. What I can then do is go to UV and let's maybe go down to Smart UV Project and click OK. And now that has made a difference. Now these are perfect squares and I can move my image around. Let's do R to rotate, 90 degrees, G to grab, let's find that front face, there we go, S to scale, G to grab, and there's my sneaker scope perfectly aligned. Now that's moving the whole image. What I can do in my 3D view, if I go to face select, I can click on this front face and I only see that face in the net. So I can just move around individual faces if I would like. Now there are some more advanced things. For example, with more complicated shapes, we unwrap them and we have to add seams and we have to basically cut them up and arrange them in a certain way. But hopefully that's enough to get you started with texturing in Blender. And remember, you can jump back and forth as much as you want. So even though I'm in the UV editing tab now, I can go back to layout. I've still got my shader options here. And even though I'm using an image, I can still bring the roughness down to make the whole image more reflective. I can bump up the metallic texture there. It will affect it like so. There's so many things we can do with this that is honestly an ultra basic introduction to texturing, but hopefully it's enough to get you started in texturing in Blender.